There's a moment in every life when the road splits open before you like a wound, and you choose the direction that feels like freedom, but tastes like ash. The young man stood at the edge of his father's land, coins heavy in his pockets, heart heavier with hunger for something he couldn't name. He didn't know yet that leaving home wouldn't fill the emptiness inside him. He only knew the fields felt too small, the father's voice too familiar, the routine too suffocating. So he asked for his inheritance early, a request that cut deeper than any blade because it was like saying, "I wish you were already dead." And the father, with tears pooling in eyes that had seen every sunrise over those hills, gave him everything. Not because he agreed, but because love, real love, doesn't cage. It releases. Even when release feels like death. The city welcomed him with open arms and closed hearts. Lights flickered like promises in the night. Laughter echoed through alleyways slick with rain and wine, and for a season he felt alive. Money flowed like water through his fingers, and strangers became friends as long as the coins kept clinking. He bought their smiles, their company, their applause. He drowned himself in pleasure, thinking he was finally living, not realizing he was slowly dying. Because freedom without foundation is just falling. And he was falling fast. The music got louder to drown out the whisper in his chest that said, "This isn't it. This isn't what you were made for." But he silenced it with another drink, another distraction, another empty promise that tomorrow would feel different. Until the money ran out. And when it did, so did they. Every laugh, every hand that once rested on his shoulder, every face that once smiled at his stories. Gone, like shadows when the sun sets. Hunger has a way of stripping away every illusion. He found himself in a pig pen, the smell of filth clinging to his skin, his clothes torn, his dignity shattered like glass underfoot. He was feeding animals that ate better than he did. And in that moment, rock bottom became holy ground. Because it's often in the mud that we finally look up. He remembered his father's servants, how they had bread to spare, how they sang while they worked, how even the least in his father's house lived with more dignity than he had now. The memory cut through him like light through fog. He'd traveled so far, believing he'd find himself out there in the world. But all he found was hunger. A hunger not just for food, but for home. For the voice he'd run from, for the arms he'd pushed away. And for the first time since he left, he let himself feel the full weight of his choices. The shame, the regret, the grief. And from that broken place a whisper formed, "I will arise and go to my father." The journey home was longer than the journey away. Not in miles, but in every step that carried the weight of rehearsed words. "Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son." He repeated them like a liturgy, a prayer, a plea. The road was dusty, his feet blistered, his heart pounding with fear and fragile hope. What if the father turned him away? What if the door was closed? What if forgiveness was a fairy tale he'd forfeited the right to believe in? Each step closer felt like walking toward judgment. But he kept walking. Because even the possibility of mercy was better than the certainty of despair. The hills began to look familiar. The trees he'd climbed as a boy. The river where he'd laughed with his brother. And then, in the distance, he saw the house. The place he'd abandoned. The place that had never abandoned him. And his legs almost gave out beneath him. But before he could finish his rehearsed speech, before he could fall to his knees in the dust, something unexpected happened. The father saw him. Not when he arrived at the gate. Not when he knocked. But while he was still a long way off. The father had been watching. Every single day since he left, the father had stood at the edge of the property, scanning the horizon, hoping, aching, praying for the silhouette of his son to appear. And when it did, when that broken figure emerged from the heat and the distance, the father didn't wait. He didn't fold his arms. He didn't demand an explanation. He ran. An old man, dignified and weathered, ran with a desperation that made the servants stop and stare. He ran toward the son who had wished him dead, toward the boy who had squandered everything, and he threw his arms around him and wept. The son tried to speak, tried to offer his confession, but the father was already calling for a robe, a ring, sandals, symbols of sonship, not servanthood. This is the scandal of grace, that while we are still far off, God runs, that before we finish our apologies, he's already clothing us in righteousness we didn't earn. The son had prepared a speech about being a servant, but the father wasn't interested in servants. He wanted his son back, not because the son deserved it, but because that's what fathers do. That's what love does. It doesn't wait for perfection. It runs toward brokenness. It doesn't demand we clean ourselves up first. It embraces us in the pig pen and carries us home. The son had thought he'd lost his identity when he lost his inheritance, but the father was showing him something deeper. Your identity was never in what you had or what you did. It was always in whose you are, and nothing, not distance or shame or sin, could change the fact that he was still a son. The robe wasn't earned. The ring wasn't deserved. The feast wasn't conditional. It was given, freely, lavishly, because love doesn't keep score. Inside the house, music filled the rooms, and the smell of roasted meat made mouths water. But outside, another son stood in the shadows, fists clenched, jaw tight. The older brother heard the celebration and felt his stomach turn. He'd stayed, he'd worked, he'd obeyed, and no one had ever thrown him a party. The injustice of it burned in his chest like acid. When he confronted his father, his words were sharp. "I've served you all these years and you never gave me anything. But this son of yours who devoured your property with prostitutes, you kill the fattened calf for him?" And the father's response was tender and devastating. "Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate, because your brother was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." The older brother's problem wasn't disobedience. It was distance. He'd stayed physically but left emotionally. He'd worked like a servant, never resting in his sonship. And now, resentment had made him a stranger in his own home. The older brother reveals something most of us don't want to admit. We can be in the Father's house and still be far from his heart. We can do all the right things for all the wrong reasons. We can obey out of duty instead of delight, out of fear instead of love. And when we do, grace becomes offensive. Mercy feels unfair. We start measuring worthiness, keeping ledgers, comparing sacrifices. We forget that none of us earned our place at the table. The Father's love wasn't divided between his sons. It was whole for each of them. The younger son needed to experience grace after rebellion. The older son needed to experience grace in the middle of routine. Both were lost. One in a distant country, one in his own backyard, and the Father's arms were open wide enough for both. Because grace isn't about fairness. It's about family. It's not about what we deserve. It's about who God is, and he is the kind of father who runs toward prodigals and pleads with the self-righteous, offering both the same invitation. Come inside. The feast is ready. You are loved. You are home. Maybe you're the younger son today, reading this from your own pig pen, shame wrapped around you like chains. Maybe you've run so far you're not sure the way back even exists. Let this truth wash over you like rain. He's watching for you. He's been watching. And the moment you turn toward home, he'll run to meet you. Not with condemnation, but with a robe. Not with lectures, but with love. You don't have to clean yourself up first. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to come. Or maybe you're the older brother, exhausted from trying to earn what was already freely given. Bitter because grace seems to flow more generously toward others than toward you. Hear the Father's voice. You've always been with me. Everything I have is yours. Stop working like a slave and start resting like a son. Stop measuring and start receiving. The feast isn't just for the one who returned. It's for you too. Come inside. Stop standing in the shadows of resentment. You belong here. This story doesn't end with the party. It ends with an invitation that echoes through every generation, every heart, every moment of regret or weariness. Come home. Whether you're in a pig pen or a field, far away or right beside him but feeling distant, the Father's arms are open. His eyes are scanning the horizon. His heart is aching for you, not because of what you can do for him, but because of who you are to him. You are his child. And nothing, not your worst mistake, not your deepest shame, not your longest absence, can change that. There's a robe with your name on it, a ring that declares your identity, a feast prepared in your honor. Not because you're perfect, but because you're loved. So rise, turn toward home, take that first step, even if your legs are shaking, even if you don't have the words, even if you think it's too late. It's not. He's waiting. And when he sees you, even while you're still a long way off, he will run, and you will know beyond any doubt that you were never forgotten. You were always his. Welcome home.